So welcome back to our regular board meeting. We've had a few changes this morning that we normally don't have, but thanks for everybody's cooperation. We're now going to 6.2, the Farm Family of the Year, and we'll call up Colleen Carlson. Take it away, Colleen.
Thank you, and thank you to our board and our commissioners and our guests this morning. Colleen Carlson, University of Minnesota Extension, ag educator. I'm starting my 9th year here in Carver and Scott County, and it's a pleasure to serve the people of this community. Today, we're here to recognize the Farm Family of the Year. This is a time-honored tradition through the University of Minnesota. Farm family members are nominated by their peers and selected by the Carver County Extension Committee. And farm families are chosen on their demonstrated commitment to enhancing and supporting agriculture. Carver County has been honoring farm families for over 30 years. Carver County is the home to over 600 farm families who have owned and operate over 156,000 acres across our beautiful county. Today, I would like the Degler family to join me up here in the front. They are the Gail and Lois Degler family. You want to come up and stand here? I'm going to say some nice words about you. So Gail and Lois Degler's farm, now 4 generations strong, is in its 76th planting season in Chanhassen. Farming has evolved over the years, and the Deglers' journey from a small dairy farm to an ag tourism business and is an adventure in adaptation and learning. Gail's mom and dad purchased the dairy farm in 1948. Milking cows was the primary income, and 2 horses provided the power to raise crops that fed the mixed herd of Jerseys and Holsteins. Gail and Lois took over the farm in the late 1980s, and as the farm machinery grew, so did the farm. Gail started renting more nearby land. By the time they sold their herd, they had the second highest producing mixed herd in the state. Gail and Lois' family also grew. They have 4 children, Beth, twins Todd and Wade, and Ellen. As their family grew, so did the town of Chanhassen. In 2001, when Gail and Lois stopped milking the dairy cows, they were the last dairy farm in that city. At that point, Gail moved into local politics as the county commissioner. In 2007, Todd, Wade, and Ellen came home from college and found local jobs that allowed them to still help with the crop farm work. They were still growing corn, soybeans, hay, and wheat, and a few pumpkins for fun, but with fewer acres, they started to look for more profitable options. With the kids' help, the Deglers transitioned their growing alfalfa hay for dairy animals to grass alfalfa mix for horses. The horse hay market is strong in the Southwest Metro, and the Deglers' proximity and the dairy background helped them respond and connect with customers. Nothing like a good dairy farmer to know how to raise alfalfa. The Deglers had discussed hay rides and corn mazes for a few years, and then in 2018, they decided to give it a try. The COVID-19 closures helped them build a new business model. And in the fall of 2020, many indoor activities were canceled and families were looking for things to do outdoors. Since then, the Deglers have grown beyond a hayride and a corn maze to a corn pit, a pumpkin trebuchet, giant slide, and other small demonstrations. They worked extensively with the city to define agritourism and provide parameters for it. Education has always been key to the family, whether through 4-H, local Bible studies, or professions. The teaching and others has always been core to the family. The University of Minnesota was critical in providing educational information to help define what they wanted in an ag tourism business. The Deglers still keep education at the foundation of what they do. Many people who step onto the Degler farm have never seen a tractor or a corn crib up close. The Deglers make that experience fun and educational for visitors and their families. Now the entire Degler family helps in some aspect of the farm again. Gail and Lois and their 4 children and 13 grandchildren all pitch in to help this family legacy continue. Congratulations to the Degler family. And I'm going to invite Todd to come forward and introduce his family and say a few words.
Awesome. Thank you, Colleen. And And thank you. Our family is very grateful to be receiving this award. As you can see, we kind of got the family part of this award down. Mom and Dad, with them, we have 20 other family members between us kids, the grandkids, and spouses. So when we get together, it's really special, and we can make some outstanding memories on the farm. So it's really, really cool. We want to especially express our deepest appreciation to Mom and Dad. For those of you that have worked with my dad here at the county for the last 20 years, you know that his hard work ethic and values that he brings to this job here stems from his work on the family farm, right? And, you know, that's easy to say, but it's really hard to do day after day after day. So we are just very grateful that Dad and Mom, you have passed those values on to us. You've given us a great example by raising us up on the farm. We can, and we look forward to doing those same things with our family as well. So thank you very much. I do want to explain a little bit more about what we do on our farm as well. And like Colleen said, you have to be introduced to the term agritourism, right? A few years ago, that term wasn't really even existent inside of Carver County. But working with the city of Chanhassen, their city planners, the extension service, especially for all the resources, thank you, and even the local county officials helped us define what agritourism is and pave the way for what that can look like here in Carver County. And it's really exciting. So what agritourism means to us is it's about building a relationship, think of it as an extended family, with the public and family farms, right? And that's rooted in education and fun. You can't help but learn when you're having fun, right? So we welcome visitors to our farm, offering family-based activities that teach agricultural principles and bring people closer to the land. Our goal is to connect the local community with the importance of agriculture in our society. So we're proud to be part of this diverse community here. We look forward to continuing our journey alongside all of you, and we hope to see you at the Degler Farm this fall, you and your families. So from our family to yours, thank you for this recognition. It is truly an honor. Thank you.
I just can't walk away from a mic and not say something. So thank you. But the thing of it is, this is a family. And part of the family comes, I got to recognize my daughter's birthday is today. And if she puts up with me for one more day, we will celebrate 48 years of marriage tomorrow. So thank you very much. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Extension. And now let's get on with business.
Do you have a moment for a picture?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
What do you want to do?
Ari, come on up where you want to do it, Ari.
Let's go right here.
Come on up.
Tell people where you want.
Do they all play basketball or any wrestlers?
All right, ready? I'm gonna count to 3. 1, 2, 3.
Too bad I'm not running for real.
Yep, congratulations.
Good on you guys.
Thank you, Beppy.
Good job, Lois.
Yeah, give credit to where credit is due.
So before we move off of that, Gail, I just want to say a couple words. I mean, what we just
Just
saw,
go ahead.
what we just saw in picture is what happens with our county vision. We'll let the family clear with noise, and I'll say a few things.
Commissioner Urman, go ahead.
But I think what we just saw in the picture and the image is what our county vision is, where the future embraces the past and keeping Carver County a great place to live, work, and play for a lifetime. And we'll probably shower you with memories too at the end of this year with your retirement, Gail. But the ones that are most poignant to me is when we have the Veterans Memorial and your family goes to the cemeteries, and they're all there. This is a big deal. I did a little bit of research too, and I found out in 2012 there was 702 family farms in Carver County, and now there's only 606. The average size of a farm back in 2012 was 213 acres. Now it's 259. We're seeing smaller farms get absorbed and get bigger, and your family's seen 76 years of that. And so congratulations to you and your family on this well-deserved honor.
Well, thank you for those kind words. But we got to move on with the rest of the meeting.
But just truly amazing, Mr. Degler. Congratulations to you and your family.
We've been very blessed. There's a lot of memories there, and don't get me started, so. And with that, we have Micah legislative update, and Micah, Matt, take it away. Thank you for indulging us with changing our agenda. I think in the 22 years that I've been here, we've never changed the agenda as much as we have this morning, so. Take it away, Matt.
Good morning. Matt Mossman, Executive Director of the Minnesota Intercounty Association. Commissioner Degler, congratulations to you and your family. And as the child of a family dairy farm myself, happy to always yield to a family dairy farm. So that's a fantastic story.
Appreciate
Great to
hearing
hear.
that.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and appreciate the flexibility as well. We were with your colleagues in Scott County this morning. It works well on our end and hopefully yours most of the time, and we were running a little bit behind today. So,
We like to talk too much over there.
you know, I think as we go through the presentation and you have the slides, we will touch on the slides, but we might go off script or gloss over them a little bit. The further we get away from the 2024 legislative session, the more we certainly are thinking about the 2025 session. And I want to, so that I don't forget, because sometimes I forget thank yous, I want to thank Commissioner Fahey as well for his participation and service on the MICA Board of Directors, and Dave Hemsey and all of his team that I rely on heavily, and I think we all do, for insight and guidance on our work throughout the year. One of the really important ways, I think, to understand the 2024 legislative session was that it was on the heels of the 2023 session. And by that, I mean so much happened in 2023, both in terms of significant allocation of resources to work that counties do, significant allocation of resources and increase in the state budget for other work, as well as an expansion of policies and programs in many areas, which also fell to the counties. And I think that that frames both what happened in 2024 as a lot of cleanup legislation, as well as less of an appetite for spending in 2024. You know, from my perspective, doing this almost 30 years now, there was, I would, back 20 years ago, we would have loved to have a budget where we came in with $3.7 billion of one-time money on the front end. I think on the heels of 2023, there was certainly a lot of concern about the longer-term trajectory of the state budget, and that narrowed the willingness of the legislature and the governor to take new actions in 2024. This slide, I think, in many ways then summarizes that dynamic as well as what we're looking at for 2025. Those two orange cells out there is what raised the caution flags for policymakers. In 26, 27, if you look out a couple years, the current projections are that spending for current programs, current state law, is about $66.4 billion. So that is more than the new revenue that's expected to come in, $64.8 billion. We consider that to be a structural imbalance. And of course, this November will be the first time we see projections for 28 and 29. That gap has been narrowing, and the state has been collecting more revenue than forecast, but that still is will be the dynamic for 2025. That said, session ended with $3.3 billion on the bottom line, back on the left-hand side at the bottom in those green highlighted areas, and an additional $3.3 billion in one-time reserves. In the end of the day, the legislature only decided to allocate, or did allocate, $424 million, mostly one-time, this last legislative session. And fully moving into our agenda and priorities as Micah and the rest of the presentation and counties, fully a quarter of that, $109 million, went towards a one-time settlement for the Tyler Supreme Court decision that ruled part of Minnesota's property tax forfeiture for non-payment of tax law to be unconstitutional. That was a significant cost that was going to fall on counties and others if the state didn't step up for this ruling, again, on state law. And so that was really important to get that done. Because I know the public is listening, also to just be clear that this is not money that was going to go or will go to counties. It's money that will go to former owners that were impacted and facilitating that settlement. So this dynamic of one-time money up front and uncertainty and about ongoing resources going forward, as of what we know right now, is also probably the dynamic that we're going to continue to see into November and as we start into the 2025 session, which will make the conversation about ongoing changes to the state budget more challenging, I should say, whereas one-time uses might be more likely to happen. So then I'll just, again, you've seen this. I have two slides on the Tyler settlement, one on the $109 million settlement fund, which had a unanimous support of the legislature. We thank Representative Liz Lagarde and Senator Hochschild for authoring that legislation, and you can see requirements for participating counties. In the interest of time, I'm going to, unless you have questions, I'm going to sort of gloss over that slide, but happy to take any questions, and that information has been shared with counties. And then, of course, the law actually needed to change in order to respond to the U.S. Supreme Court decision to bring Minnesota statutes into compliance. And a lot of energy was spent on that during the legislative session. Legislation authored by Representative Sandra Feist and Senator Bonnie Westland that made changes. The most significant, conceptually, what will happen that will be different from prior law is that there will be a required auction when property is forfeited for non-payment of tax. And again, there's a 3-year period or so in Minnesota during which counties do a lot of work to try and help owners get their property back and clear up the tax debt. And so just to be clear, there is a lot of protections already in the law. There's now more protections even in the law for property owners. But one is that there will have to be a sale of the land. And if that sale exceeds the amount that is owed to the county as defined in law as minimum bid, that surplus, if you will, that overage will go back to the property tax payer or other interested parties through a claims process. And again, that's at a high level. The other thing I'll just say here is we know, and it got more attention, which was good, but it didn't get solved, that there are a lot of costs that fall to counties. The reality is that you all know most of these properties have contamination issues or other dilapidated properties. These are not your, most cases, highly saleable, marketable properties. Otherwise, they would be unlikely to fall into the circumstances that they are. And so we will be looking to the legislature for resources to help with that. And then finally, I'll just say, so looking back, the tax bills coming in from the House and Senate had significant other changes that would have impacted local government in the area of some one-time increase in SCORE, homeless prevention dollars, SWCD aid, a proposal that both the House and Senate had different versions of that would have extended the opportunity for cities and counties to impose a sales tax with referendum voter approval without going to the legislature for a special law. None of those things happened. All of those things came out of the bill at the end and will be, particularly the one in the middle. There's already been some meetings here during the interim about what that relationship might look like going forward to grant some authority to local governments for the sales tax, and that's a conversation that we will be closely engaged in. I'm going to stop there, except to say that going back to that budget slide and saying that we are looking forward to 2025, we know that there's significant pressure for some pensions change and expansion, and just I think more broadly, with all the changes that happened in the last couple years, having a conversation about how that's impacting county budgets, county levy pressures, and whether or not the state is fully funding the new expectations that that counties are being asked to administer. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Novak, unless there's questions on what I've covered so far.
Only question I'd have, a comment is, the budget forecast is coming out in November. Is that before or after the election?
It's the end of November. It's
Okay.
about November. Yep.
That's after.
I'm going to double check that.
Okay.
The February one is always at the end of February. It may be a few days before the election. It'll be right about that time frame, actually.
Would you expect, if it was before the election, that would sway a few people?
It'll be so close to the election. I think
Yeah.
it will be
Not enough time.
kind of in the weeds at that point. That would be my
Thank you for that
take on it.
information.
Yeah.
Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Always good to be in Carver County. And let me just get right to it in terms of transportation. I'll lead off with something positive, which is the lease vehicle sales tax revenue, which has been exclusive to you and 4 other suburban counties, was protected once again this year. We do expect the revenue to be up a little bit. It wasn't easy as it was in the platform of Hennepin and Ramsey County, so word to the wise, stay alert on that as we go forward. Most of the transportation bills and activities this session were found in 4 bills. House File 3436, the Omnibus Transportation Policy Bill. House File 5242, the Omnibus Transportation Finance Bill, which ended up in a conference committee with the Labor Bill and the Housing Bill. And they both passed. And then there were 2 bonding bills, House File 5220, House File 5162, the so-called cash bill, neither one of which made it to the finish line. So let me just say briefly on the omnibus policy bill, there was really nothing controversial in there. It passed overwhelmingly in one house and unanimously in the other. So let me focus on the transportation finance bill, House File 5242. As I said, that ended up in a conference committee with the transportation, labor, and housing bills. After 3 straight nights of hearings on the last week, it was put out onto the floor. In the end, it became part of the tax bill, House File 5247, that you may recall from the news reports, which became the vehicle for the Lyft Uber deal, which sort of dominated the last month of the session. Ultimately, with about 5 minutes to spare, that package did pass, all 1,500 pages of it.
Did it?
It did. 2 parts. Funding, they were only given $4 million as a target, but through a variety of cancellations and other maneuvers, they did distribute $117 million. And probably the 2 things that Carver would be most interested in, $15 million went to the state road construction account, and $15 million went to the corridors of commerce. I want to focus just a little bit on the policy side of it. I don't know if Lyndon's here.
Yep.
Yeah, back there. I need to just make a special comment about your county engineer. You know how good he is. I've learned how good he is over the years. But the whole state has seen it too. And he was one of the people on the greenhouse gas task force that had a very aggressive schedule. They met from July of 2023 through February of 2024. It was, I think, a frustrating job. A lot of hard work was done, and there were things accomplished thanks to Lyndon and the other MICA engineers. And let me just highlight 3 of them. This has to do with what's going to determine the road and bridge projects that actually get built as we go forward over time. And, you know, it runs in the face of some of the environmental things that they're trying to do to cut back on global warming. So 3 things that did happen. They've now established that when they make their decisions, it'll be based on data that comes out of a portfolio of projects around the state instead of project to project, which gives more flexibility to make these things work and still allow the projects to go forward. The task force that Lyndon was part of has become a permanent technical advisory committee, which will have 2 local appointments on it, and we're hoping those will be engineers. And then the final thing that I think is very important is there was a period of time where the thought was that safety may no longer be the most prominent factor in deciding which projects go forward, and that was retained. So 117 million was distributed, as I said earlier. Those things did get done. On bonding, let's just say, for a variety of reasons, most of them political, the bonding bill did not make it to the finish line. And so as the session ends, we look forward to 2025. I think bonding is an issue that will be at the top of most people's lists. The other thing we know for sure that is in the House, no matter who wins the election, and the Senate isn't up, there will be a new House Transportation Chair because Representative Hornstein is retiring. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Workman.
Well, I butted in, Senator, on whether or not the bill passed. I know United Health is suing over the big bill, I think, right? The 1,400-page bill. And maybe as a collective, you guys can give us we always ask for predictions here. So we can get on with our own lives, but about whether I think there's been a lot of challenges over the years over the process of the legislature passing bills a minute too late or however a little bit too late. And I'm not sure that the courts are much interested in flipping that stuff, but it seems to me that could be a pretty big deal if that 1,400-page bill was ruled to have not passed.
Well, it would be a big deal, and that could happen. Like you say, though, historically, usually the courts have gone out of their way to try to stay out of the legislature's way and keep the 2 branches separate. You know, every week we talk about it, we get a week closer to the start of the regular session, which tends to mitigate some of the appetite for moving forward with those lawsuits. Other than that, I don't have an educated opinion.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Speaking of appetite, have you lost yours, or did I read an email that you are retiring? I know you used to be about 6'7", and all this politics and granite steps have wore you down. Or is this it? Are we?
This is it at the end of September. I was going to ask for a 1-minute indulgement on my part to say thank you to Carver County for all of the years of nice treatment I've gotten from your board. I appreciate it. And a lot of interaction with all of you collectively, but also individually. And Tom and I go back, I think I can say decades. And so I'll miss the process, but, you know, comes a time to say goodbye.
You've done a great job. We're going to miss you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Other questions for Mr. Novak? If not,
Thank you.
thank you. Nancy, welcome. You're not giving up on us, are you?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm only 39.
That's good. That's good.
Came from my mother. Let's see here. I think I can figure this out. I did. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm Nancy Selesky, and I represent Mike in the area of both public health and human services, and it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I'm going to start with emergency medical services funding, EMS funding. This was a bipartisan bill which passed pretty, not unanimously, but pretty darn close. They ended up putting about $30 million into the system. People are recognizing that that wasn't nearly enough, that we need to somehow, the state needs to somehow find an ongoing funding stream for this. The task force continues to meet, but they did at least take care of $30 million of the urgent need at that moment. They did, I just want to mention, replace the Emergency Medical Services Board with a new state office of EMS. So that Minnesota is the only state in the country that has an actual office relating to EMS. The next item is the Minnesota African American Family Preservation Act, also known as Layla Jackson's Law. This is something the legislature's been working on for quite a while, and they did make some progress this year. There are two key components. There'll be a pilot program that both Hennepin and Ramsey counties will be participating in. And then underneath that, there's a working group that will provide both guidance and oversight for that pilot in Hennepin and Ramsey County. At our request, Micah's request, we asked for appointment authority to appoint at least one person to ensure that we have counties of various sizes represented as well as geographically balanced. So we're working with the other county organizations on who those folks are going to be. The working group is to have best practices and a plan done by September 1st of 2026 with the effective date going statewide for this is January 1st of 2027. As you know, HHS is hard to follow, and there's a few things related to it. I'm going to highlight three bills. The Children and Families provisions was tucked into the omnibus education bill. And some of the highlights there is it requires a review of child fatalities and near fatalities. It requires counties to establish local child mortality review teams. DHS is required to provide training and support to those local review teams. They created a new Supreme Court Council on Child Protection. DHS is to review other states' experiences relative to child protection and come up with a common entry point for reporting initial maltreatment situations. State is also required to develop a new IT system, the Child Welfare Information System. They did put $10 million into the Social Services Information System, SSIS, which we've been talking about, the green technology for a very long time. Not enough money, but certainly made some progress there. They also put $1 million into child care improvement grants. In terms of policy, both child care centers and family child care providers are able to develop a policy relating to immunization of children over the age of 2 months. $350,000 for a family child care ombudsperson. That will be ongoing funding each year. What was not included, and we were disappointed in, is the child welfare fiscal analysis. We're trying to raise the fact that counties put a lot of money into the system, and we really wanted to see that as included in the final package. Unfortunately, that was dropped at the end, but we'll continue to work in that vein. Sorry. Then there were two bills that were amended into that omnibus tax bill that we were talking about, the 1,500-page bill. And that was the Senator Hoffman, Representative Noor Human Services bill. I'm going to hit some of the highlights on that. They did make some changes to min choices. They allow counties to continue contracting for min choices assessments. The timeline was modified in which a county must visit an individual that has requested a min choices assessment from 20 calendar days to 20 working days. And the validity of the min choices assessment has been extended from 60 days to 365 days. What was not addressed that we continue to work on is the reassessments that are necessary every year. We're really wanting to see a streamlined tool for those folks whose situations are just not going to change from year to year. Unfortunately, that requires, fiscal note had to be dealt with in that situation, and so we did not get that across the finish line. Continue to work on that, and in terms of the fiscal note, we'd like to also see that local impact note. In terms of jail health, they made a couple of changes. DHS is required to submit a waiver application for an MA demo project to provide health care services to bridge community-based services for individuals that are in correctional facilities. And they also created a reentry services working group that does include county representation. And finally, there is a pilot program to provide counties payment for supporting correctional facilities that administer long-acting injectable mental health medicine for those folks that need that kind of treatment. You've heard a lot about priority admissions, civil commitment, do not meet medical criteria days, et cetera. This is something counties have been working on for a really long time. This year, there was a task force, actually last year, 2023, there was a task force that's been meeting for the last year and a half on this and trying to come up with answers to what do we do about capacity. We need beds in the community, we need beds in the state-operated system. And if they were to fix the entire situation, it would be hundreds of millions of dollars likely. What did get done, last year we got a 2-year reprieve for those folks that are deemed mentally ill and dangerous, that are awaiting commitment, or they've been committed as MIND. They're waiting for a bed in one state-operated facility and coming from another. We have no ability to move those folks in any way, so we asked for a reprieve. The first 6 months of that, it saved counties $8 million statewide. So it's a big deal. Counties are putting a lot of money into this, and the dollars are just not getting into the system where they're so badly needed. The legislature did establish a mentally ill and dangerous civil commitment reform task force. And this task force that I was just referencing that was put together last year will continue into next year. Commissioner Terrell Clark is the AMC or the county board representative, and then Angie Youngerberg from Blue Earth County is the human services representative. In terms of this bill, again, they did provide a limited exception for 10 people that are currently sitting in hospital settings. HCMC testified that they had somebody in their hospital for over a year waiting to get into St. Peter. And so that is something that they did agree to move 10 people in that situation to the kind of the front of the line, if you will. Other things in that bill is there was a related to ORAC, which is the opioid response fund that was created as a result of the settlement. There's language in there that created a registration fee on opioid manufacturers. That was set to sunset. Once the account reached a certain level, they repealed that sunset. So that registration fee or those annual fees will continue on the manufacturers. Other miscellaneous language, DHS is to consult with counties to improve case management information systems. And finally, we get to the Health and Human Services Bill, which again is Representative Wickland, Senator Wickland, Representative Liebling, and this was the second bill that was related to HHS that was put into that 1,500-page omnibus bill at the end of session. Some of the highlights, they did set the telecommunications fee at 12 cents per month for each consumer line, and that is for the operation and maintenance of the 988 suicide prevention and crisis system. Something that counties have been working on for a long time and is very much a priority is trying to get a benefit under MA to provide residential mental health crisis stabilization for children. We have it for adults, we do not have it for children. Under this language, the department is to consult with counties, tribal nations, and other advocates and report back by October of next year. So we're optimistic that we're going to get that moving. The other thing I would mention is there's language in this bill that requires child placing agencies or counties to notify an Indian child's tribe or tribes immediately, which means no later than 24 hours after receiving information on a missing child. Again, there was a lot in the bills. These are the highlights. I think you've got our report, and it's pretty voluminous. I just want to end by calling out Heather Goodwin from your staff. I work closely with Heather, and she's very much active in MICA meetings as well as representing counties statewide. And I just wanted to call that out. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I've seen a lot of presentations like this. I think it was the last page. Finally, there was a mention of mental health. I know it's inherent in a lot of things that we do. But it's not lost on me that the state decided to lower the reimbursement rate of mental health at a time when 1 out of 5 people experience mental illness, 1 out of 20 have severe or serious mental illness, of which half of their mental health condition didn't receive treatment last year. What can we do as we look for legislative priorities, advocacy, allyship? And I know Heather's probably led the charge in a way that most haven't, to get ahead of it so we're upstream versus all these dollars being emergency based. We don't have enough time, money, resources, people, interest for the next 10 years to handle the onslaught if we don't get upstream. Is there anything you could offer us in terms of allyship or things we can do on our side to make it more of an issue and not have a reduced reimbursement rate that kind of cripples our teams?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner, good question. If you talk to NAMI Minnesota, which I'm pretty active with their group, they'll say, you know, the mental health system just hasn't even been built, really. I mean, we closed facilities without having a plan as to where these folks were going to go after. And so it's an ongoing problem. I would say that the advocacy community has done a great job of educating the legislature on this on a bipartisan basis. We've got lots of folks, lots of families, most families have had some issue or some, you know, something within their family or within their friendship group. So we continue to work with them. It's money. I mean, that's always the challenge. And we continue to, again, this priority admissions is a big deal. That's the folks that are the most ill. But as you said, you've got folks in our communities that, you know, trying to get to them before there's a crisis is, you know, preventing the crisis in the first place is what would be great. It feels like we're always responding instead of, you know, trying to prevent certain things from happening. There just isn't the money, I would say, for both. And so we do what we can with the money that we're given. And it's a challenge. There's no question. Everybody recognizes it. And we continue to push on it.
We continue to put a Band-Aid on a gusher, and I think that it permeates. I mean, I look over at Mark Metz and the attorney's team, or law enforcement, or HHS, or we're absorbing these unfunded mandates indirectly by not addressing it. And I know it's a huge budget issue. The only reason they reduced the reimbursement rate is because it's such a big and growing number. And if you actually address it, it's going to cost a lot of money. And so I think you'll hear from our board and Heather and others loud and clear that we want to be an advocate in the space to reverse that and actually address the problem versus kick the can. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Other questions? Prevention versus solving a problem. Immunization. You mentioned that child providers can develop a policy. Up until now, if I'm a child daycare center person, I couldn't set a policy what kids can come in.
Mr. Chair, that was a controversial item, was introduced last year and didn't finish last year, but did this year in 2024. But yes, the issue is that the family or the child care clinic or child care facility can develop a policy. It was not there before.
I was not aware of that. Schools have policies, right? And what happens to a kid if they don't follow that policy? Because we're hearing about outbreaks of, you name the disease, because kids are not properly immunized.
Right. Mr. Chair, you're correct. There's some schools. I'm not certain what the requirements are in schools, but there are certain exemptions that folks can get relative to children in schools. Like I said, I don't have it happened this year, and again, it was controversial.
Yeah, wow. Well, thank you for the work that you've been doing down there.
Thank you.
Keep it up. Matt, take us home with environment.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will just one last substantive slide here. We do work in a couple of other areas. We certainly spend time on environment, which increasingly, particularly in the solid waste area, but also in groundwater regulation and protection, has a significant county intersection. The biggest piece of change that happened in this last legislative session was the passage of something called the Packaging Waste and Cost Reduction Act. So the legislation that passed will, over the next couple of years, set up a producer responsibility organization, or a PRO is what it's called. It is a about 40% of the waste stream is packaging waste. So producers, meaning the entity that is branding the packaging, and this is packaging defined fairly broadly with some exemptions in the law. So cardboard is sort of the thing that most of us think of, but it could also be plastic or other derivatives of plastic, some of which are currently recyclable, some of which are not. Producers will pay into a producer into this PRO. The revenues from that PRO will help support the recycling, reduction, reuse industry, if you will, and the work that gets done in that area, a lot of which is currently funded by counties. So over time, this will also help offset some of the costs that counties are currently, as an administrator of the solid waste system, costs that counties are currently incurring to will be able to get money from the PRO to help fund those activities of the county, as well as an expansion in the kind of concept of the law is changing the incentive structure so that materials will either be also reduced or more recyclable in their content over time. There was also a task force that was set up to investigate better or more how critical materials, minerals, other components of a vast array of electronic products and other products could be better captured at end of life and bring back recommendations. As you all know, I think electronic waste, e-waste is still something that counties and solid waste administrators and facilities have a lot of concern about, and so there's not agreed upon solutions in that regard, and so this will bring some recommendations forward. Groundwater was focused on sort of a one-time basis in southeastern Minnesota karst region, where there's a lot of concerns about nitrates in groundwater, but it also elevated issues that Mike has started to engage in midway through the session, and a subgroup of county commissioners who are several of whom are farmers, who were able to help give some guidance. And so I anticipate that issue to come up and continue on the platform, on the agenda for the legislature in the coming session as well. And then just broadly, I won't actually dive into them, but the earned sick and safe time, paid family medical leave, pensions all continued to have changes and tweaks to legislation that was taken up in 2023 and adjustments that we followed, some of which we were able to moderate in a way that was better for counties, some of which we didn't quite get what we were looking for. So that's a conversation that may continue as well. So happy to answer any questions on those items, but to some extent from our scheduling standpoint, one of the things that we really like from the 2023 session is that the legislature changed the start time for legislative sessions from the first Tuesday following the first Monday to the second Tuesday following the first Monday in January, which in 2025 is the latest possible start it could be on January 14th, is when the legislature reconvenes.
Questions for Matt?
Matt, I know
Commissioner Fahey.
when we had our Micah median last week, we talked a little bit about the governor, the One Minnesota plan. And now with our governor trying to move on, is that plan in jeopardy overall, or do you think that will still be carried forward?
In commissioners, the commissioner of Minnesota Management and Budget was, which of course is a key state agency leader, was our guest at the MICA Board of Directors meeting. That's what Commissioner Fahey is referring to. And in part of that presentation, there was a presentation of sort of what are some of the guiding directions that the governor's office is putting out to state agencies for development of budget recommendations. I don't anticipate that context to change very much in answer to your question, because if the governor does become vice president, the lieutenant governor will become governor. They're in finish out the 2-year term, and so as an administration, I would anticipate probably those parameters. That framework for the governor's recommendations will probably remain roughly the same.
Other
Thank you.
thoughts? If not, thank you for taking the time and sharing the good work that you're doing down there with us. And I hope to see you real soon. Like to see all of you again, but some, like myself, where it's time for somebody else to do the heavy work. So thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
With that, it comes to a goofy agenda here. County Administrator's Report, Mr. Hemsey.
Yeah, I apologize for the jumping around the agenda. We did have CDA work session on the agenda. I know Allison and others are watching, so it'll probably be a half an hour, 45 minutes, I'm guessing, for that,
We have
for
a
them. So we'll go into a closed session now and then come back out to that work session. So that's what I have.
Okay. With that, is there a motion? We're going to go into a closed session to address labor negotiations. I don't even remember where we're at here. 9-1.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, motion to go into closed session for labor negotiations. Minnesota statute 13D-03 allows us, a public entity, to go into closed session to plan and discuss labor negotiations. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion to go into closed session? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.